Hello there. I'm Brad Nickerson. Welcome to Tri-Cities Community Television. Today we are speaking with Stacy Bernier from Bernier Associates. Stacy is a consultant to the alternative energy industry. Stacy, thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Brad.
We're going to be talking about geothermal technologies and how they affect communities. What I'd like to have you do initially is explain to us what geothermal is and how it works.
Sure. I think what a lot of people get confused about first, Brad, is I'll sort of break it down to a simplicity, is that there's geothermal and then there's geo-exchange. So geothermal, which I'm not going to be directly speaking about, is geothermal is a deep drill into the ground. They harness the steam that is the hot water, if you like, that produces steam and produces generation, electricity. The energy that I'm going to speak about, where my expertise is geo-exchange. So that's really borrowing energy from the surface of the earth, if you like. So the ground below us here, in most regions, is about the ambient air temperature for that region. So we have the ability to borrow that heat and utilize it to heat our homes thermally and cool our homes. So we basically bore the energy out of the ground, much like a refrigerator.
Correct.
So when a lot of people don't understand how a refrigerator works, we say, just think of a refrigerator. But what a refrigerator is doing is, if you put your roast in the refrigerator, it takes the heat out of that roast. And then it expels it to the back of the fridge. So if you put your hand at the back of the fridge, that's what you're feeling, is that energy from that roast that you just put in there.
It's usually hot, right?
Exactly, it's hot.
So it's transferring the heat out of the fridge and into the house.
Exactly. So geothermal is simply that. It's taking the same thing as taking the energy, which could be the roast, and you utilize it and you bring it into the home to heat the home. The beauty of it is you can reverse that, and you can take the energy out of the building through this system and put it back into the ground to store it and re-energize it for reuse.
So
it's a
you're
big
making
cycle.
a cycle.
Exactly. So if you look at a system, you'd have a cycle of the energy repeating itself, then you'd have the building energy repeating itself. We call it, you have two loops, a first loop of energy and a second loop of energy inside the building. And then there's a point of transfer that takes place.
And so is this system, is this hard on the environment then?
No, because I think in this case you're just using the environment, which is right at your feet, to heat your building and cool your building.
So you're taking the energy that's already around us, that we can access for basically free. It's not like we're using any kind of a carbon intensive energy to create energy to run the system. We're using energy that already exists, is right there. We're tapping into it, and we're using it to either heat or cool our homes.
Correct, and you can extend this even further. We have geo-exchange, but you have sewer. So we have sewer heat recovery. So the gray water that you have that goes down into the treatment plant is warm. So you can borrow that heat.
Our sewers generate heat.
Exactly.
And so we can access that. Are there other things that we can do?
The other thing you can use data centers. So as you know,
what's a data center?
So a data center is the area where we've all got cell phones. There's servers that produce the whatever they do at a data center. I'm not an expert in a data center, but they have servers in those data centers that produce heat. So
it's the electronics that are used to store our information. From cell phones, from computer systems and things like that. Those are quite large buildings that generate a lot of heat. I think that you're saying that we can capture that heat, and we can use that heat that otherwise would go into our environment. We can use that into your kind of system.
Correct. And the other thing you can do is, a good example is, if you've got, in the communities here in the Tri-Cities, you've got an ice rink and you've got a community center next to it. Well, those ice rinks, you have to freeze that ice. And the only way they freeze the ice is they take the energy out of the ice.
The warm energy.
The warm energy out of the ice. And in normal cases, they expel that into the atmosphere. In this case, you can bore that energy to take it to the building next door and heat that building.
So that's like a really well-designed system. All it is a design system that allows us to use our energy more efficiently.
Correct. And I like to look at it as being a shared system. So if I'm, when I got into this business, in the early 2000s, what attracted me to it was that I'd walk on the ground, and an individual spoke to me about the ground energy a few years before that, and I just continually thought about this, and then it just attracted me to this industry.
Sure.
And a short story is my father, when I started to go into the industry, I was telling him what I was going to do, and he says, he grew up in Saskatchewan. He told me that what they used to do in Saskatchewan in the barns, when they were with the cows, was they would put a pipe in the ground out into the field. They dig it very deep, and they bring it into the barn, and then the wind would blow cold air through that pipe, and it would capture the heat from the ground, and it would warm the barn. So he thought he was way ahead of me with respect to this, because that's what his grandfather did.
Right.
So he told me about this, and that's how they got a longer period of time for the calving and things that take place on a farm, which I wouldn't even try to be an expert on, but that's what he said. So I was saying that the use of energy like that has been around for hundreds of years. It's simply, if you want to get warm in a cave, you go into a cave and you utilize the ground temperature to help you warm up in that cave. So it's just very common sense, and I think that if we apply common sense to what we're trying to do, that's going to be a significant change to what we're doing globally, to what we're doing. It's the simple things are going to be the biggest things that make change.
The simple things, better design.
Yes.
So in this process, though, what is the main advantage to geothermal alternative energy?
So I think the main advantage is that it can have a direct impact on carbon immediately. So in a carbon environment, there's an equation to reaching what that true carbon reduction is. So, and geothermal gives you an immediate to that. So once you take the other components to that formula, geo is the greatest impact to that carbon reduction component. So is a large impact. So it takes it in the 50 to 60% range of reduction against a building. So it's a significant amount.
50 to 60% reduction. So So by changing from, say, powering an air conditioner through electricity that's generated by coal or something like that, by going to a geothermal shared energy type system, we can reduce our carbon footprint by 50 to 65%. That's something that we could be doing in cities and communities and in our homes right now. That's something that we could be doing.
Correct. I mean, and the formula will, you might get greater, you might get less. I can't specify more. It's the design and who you're using to do that design.
Right.
And that's the key component.
But the issue is that this is a technology that exists right now, right,
sitting in front of us.
And there's no real reason not to be doing it. It's not like pie in the sky.
No, I think too is that you can, cities around us and communities are using it today, big communities. City of Richmond has a 144 acres called the Alexandra site, and it uses two large geo-exchange fields, and it heats and cools that community. So it's got smart centers, it's got residential.
Is that the whole community or just like a segment of that?
144 acres.
It's something that they've added as they're going. This is an initiative by the city as they're moving towards a better carbon footprint.
Correct, and they're looking at doing other things to their city to make it reducing carbon. Same with the City of Vancouver. They're taking great initiatives with respect to finding alternative ways to reduce carbon, and they're taking. And it's interesting because transportation, in the studies that I've looked at from the city, is that transportation is the largest component to carbon. Second to that is buildings. So buildings is your second greatest opportunity to reduce carbon.
So the second greatest thing that we could be doing is just changing our minds right within our communities and starting to do a better job in designing systems that do that. I just have, as we're beginning to wrap up here,
yes.
I just have one more question. Why is this important to you? Why do you think that you, or why did you get into this? What's the draw?
So I think it's funny because I'm a pretty common sense person, and when I looked at what I saw, I just believe that, what I've always told my children is that example in leadership comes by doing and not talking. So I thought the best thing I could do was step out to something I believe and make those small steps towards getting to believing in an industry and supporting the industry itself to getting where we're going to go and make that reduction. Fortunately, I've been fortunate to work for numerous companies, including my own, where I've been able to make larger impacts on that in steps towards that with individuals and people in cities and throughout North America. And there's been some great leadership in those areas that I've had the opportunity to work with those individuals. And I think that's what's drawn me into it, is saying, how can I be a part of it? And how can I make a difference with that? And it's not that you have to have your name in there to be the person, it's the fact that you're doing something to get us to where we are and educating the industry and individuals that there's something out there.
Okay, I'm just going to ask you one last follow-up question to that. Are you hopeful? Are you hopeful for our future with this kind of technology?
I'm very hopeful. I'm hopeful that that common sense will dictate over the necessity that we have to do something to get there. And I think the fact that we can't look at oversight and cost, that we have to look at that there's something there that we can harness today that's being captured that can make a difference to utilizing a fossil fuel. Am I foolish enough to think that we'll get there 100% in my lifetime? I don't believe so, but I do believe that we'll get there. And I believe that if the education of individuals, understanding it and maintaining that common sense approach will get us there.
All right.
And leadership is the key.
Leadership is the key.
That's right.
All right, Stacey, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I've been here today with Stacey Bernier, and we've been talking about geothermal alternative energy. Thank you for watching Community Television. Good afternoon.
So I think you did a good job.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you being here.
No problem.